Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Q&Play, my monthly Q&A series where I answer your questions in a rambly, unscripted format. The first question comes from Animationate. How do I balance my encounters, and how do I know if someone is min-maxing? I would appreciate how to deal with that pesky min-maxing as well. Okay, so first and foremost, someone could be like min-maxing or build crafting, and it's not a big deal. Min-maxing isn't inherently an issue. It's not like being an incel. Min-maxing can be just fine in most D&D games. Like, I have players who optimize their characters. They don't go out of their way to create extremely broken build combinations or anything, but they do optimize their characters, and for my level of campaign difficulty, that's fine. In fact, I think that is good. The problem is when min-maxing becomes a chore for the dungeon master, when you as a DM feel like you need to balance combat around one particular player, when one particular player is holding back the dam, so to speak. They're the most powerful thing, and without them, the entire party falls and crumbles in a heartbeat. Basically, everyone else is irrelevant. That is where it becomes an issue, not just for the DM, but sometimes for the other players who feel like they're becoming less and less relevant in combat. You as a DM will know that the optimizing is going too far when you feel burnt out, when you feel that pressure, when you feel like every combat you're not doing enough to challenge the players, when you feel like you're not doing a good job anymore because this one player can just destroy every encounter you put them up against. That is where you have an issue. You want to have fun playing D&D. You want to make sure everyone at the table is having fun. You want to make sure that everyone feels like that they are putting their own weight into combat. There are many solutions to this, but honestly, the most simple one is just to talk to the player about it. And if they respond with hostility, then that's another issue entirely. However, most players who know how to min-max and optimize a character are experienced with D&D and will understand where you're coming from. Hell, a lot of those players have been DMs themselves and will definitely understand where you're coming from. As for balancing encounters, that is something that is really difficult to do sometimes. I totally understand it. I use challenge rating as a ballpark, and then I look at the enemies, and I just look at the average damage the enemies can do. They usually put that on the stat block, and it's easy enough for you to just roll the dice out and see how much damage this enemy can do to a player. If they can kill a player in one round, easily, without any effort on average, then that may be a little bit much. That's as much advice as I can give in like 2 minutes, but I try my best. Hopefully I can make a whole video on this topic someday. Okay, next question from Whimsical Muse. What is your favorite, least favorite, and the best part of world creation? What has been your favorite moment of running the game for your players? What's the best puzzle or trap you set up for them? Alright, that's a lot of questions. So first and foremost, my favorite and least favorite part of world building. My favorite has to be creating NPCs. I love creating characters for my players to interact with. I usually give them a lot of depth so that the players can learn about them throughout the story of the game. I love BioWare games, or at least, you know, the ones that don't suck. Ones like Mass Effect, Dragon Age, those are great games. Anthem, less so. But actually, Anthem proves a big part of why this is important. If you're unaware, Anthem is a video game that was not very good. And part of the reason it was not very good was because the story had basically no depth to it at all. There was not a lot of substance there, as opposed to other BioWare games like Mass Effect or Dragon Age, where the characters that you could interact with gave the game a lot of charm. You could learn about these awesome, cool people in your crew or in your party that players truly fell in love with. Anthem did not have that, and that's why the game, or at least part of the reason, why the game flopped for so many people. I want the NPCs in my games to be characters my party really love, just like how I love the player characters that they create. And my least favorite part of world building, I have to say that it's in-depth city creation. I love creating the overhead idea of a city, but going down into the dirt and actually creating a map for it and actually writing out shops and stuff, I don't like that. It's usually not very fun. Very few times do I enjoy city creation. I usually just do the overhead idea of the city and then come up with the aesthetic, and then that's it. I don't enjoy going down and creating a full city map. I'm just not that type of DM. My favorite game running moment has got to be the end of my first campaign. I mean, that was a really emotional day just in general for a lot of different reasons. I remember one of the first Roll for Insight episodes I ever did, the podcast where I interview a bunch of D&D creators. I actually did an episode with my party, and we talked about our game, and we all really loved it, and that ending moment, getting to that final precipice, that was a big deal for all of us. The best puzzle or trap that you've set for your players? I don't create many puzzles or traps for my players, honestly. They're more of in the combat and social aspects of the game. We don't do too much exploring of dungeons. Dungeons are usually more like a gauntlet where you can go from point A to point B and find a variety of different monsters to fight along the way and cool scenery and stuff. But yeah, I don't do a lot of puzzles or traps, mostly because I'm not very good at creating them. This Casual Dork the First asks, so I'm a first-time DM who is running a campaign that I wrote myself. Without bombarding you with details, what's happening right now is my players are trapped in a haunted house and trying to find a way out. Do you have any advice on creating suspense until I release the plot twist? I don't know what your plot twist is, so I can't really speak to that part, but in terms of building suspense and like a horror atmosphere, I actually got a couple questions about D&D horror games. And D&D horror, it's hard to do. I think XP to level 3 made fun of it in a skit. I'll probably put it in the video, but anyway, point is that it is really hard to do D&D horror, and I think step one is to make sure that your players are down to like take horror a little bit seriously. Horror does not work when your players are just making dick jokes about everything or just screwing around. It doesn't work, and joking around is okay. I'm not trying to say that you can't joke around, but in horror games specifically, when you are excessively goofing off, the tension is completely taken out, and tension is a big part of why horror works. When you are doing a D&D game and you are doing a horror thing, talk to your players about it. Like, ask them just straight up, like, do you want to do horror? Are you willing to engage in that medium? And if they say no, then they say no. If they say yes, then great, you got to go ahead. Okay, step two is ambiance. Ambiance is so important to horror. If you have players that are willing to take it seriously and willing to immerse themselves in this horror atmosphere, you need to actually like create an atmosphere. Music is huge for this. I do not understand dungeon masters who do not play with music. I can remember so many times where the music that I played during the scene really set my players into the mood. They really eased them into the roleplay, eased them into the world I was trying to build. It's a huge part of my games, and it is a big part of creating a cool horror atmosphere for your players. Zink Hero of YouTube asks, I'm curious about your opinion on this. Is Strahd a tragic fallen hero or a creepy incel? So I went back to read pages 9 and 10 where they describe Strahd and how to play Strahd. And honestly, I do not see the tragic fallen hero route of the story. In Curse of Strahd, before Strahd's death and before he became a vampire, Strahd is described as a conqueror, like a bloody and ruthless conqueror. And yes, he's described as doing that after the death of his father. And there's an implication, I guess, that maybe he was doing it to like avenge his dad because they were going after his family's enemies. But the book never explicitly states that Strahd was doing it to avenge his father. It does state that Strahd's mother was mortified and terrified of him until her death, which, you know, that's great. Oh yeah, and by the way, that's all the pre-vampire dark deal with eldritch powers of the Shadowfell stuff. Like, that's before that. He was not a good dude before, and he really wasn't a good dude after. Now, could you play Strahd as a tragic fallen hero? Sure, you could. You'd have to change a lot of things, but honestly, like, I could totally see Strahd being this fallen Robb Stark-esque character. His father gets assassinated by these political rivals, and Strahd goes on a bloody conquest to stop them. And in order to fulfill his vengeance, he has to take on this terrible bargain and all this stuff. And honestly, I think that could be really cool. How will you reconcile that with his incredibly creepy behavior towards Irina and killing his own brother in the name of that? I don't know. I think Strahd could be an interesting fallen hero, but honestly, I don't think you really need to play him like that if you don't specifically want that fantasy for your villain. Honestly, guys, just bad guys who are just bad. That's fun. That's cool. That's okay. You don't need every bad guy to have some sympathetic root to them. Some bad guys are just bad. I think it's also okay and even at times fun for your players to play Strahd as this dictatorial and creepy asshole. Players like taking out bad guys who are really bad. It's satisfying to finally give them their comeuppance, you know? So many dungeon masters have played Strahd, and each of them have brought something slightly new to the table and done a great job at playing this very iconic D&D character. Matt Mercer has done it, Mark Humes has done it, Chris Perkins iconically did it during the 2015 Dice Camera action game, which was the thing that got me into D&D. All of these different portrayals could offer you something, some form of inspiration for your own portrayal of Strahd. And be sure to remember, Strahd is not a real person. Strahd will not sue you if you print something that he doesn't like in your D&D notes. So you could do what you want with the character. If you want to play him as this tragic fallen hero or as a creepy incel, whatever. I think that that's cool. Question from CatandRobby Flores. What is a subclass you hate with a passion? Not at my table levels of hate. I honestly don't really hate any spec with that kind of passion. There are definitely specs out there that I don't want to play, that's happened before. Like, I'm not really interested in playing the thief spec for the rogue. That's not interesting to me. I don't want to play that archetype for my character. I don't find the playstyle to be very interesting. That's that. But I don't, like, hate it. If someone else wants to play that archetype, that's okay. I just don't really have any hate in my heart for any D&D specs. I will say that there is a really minor tinge of worry that I get when someone says, I'm gonna play a necromancer, specifically in Curse of Strahd, because in my own RPG horror story, the perpetrator was a necromancer. But honestly, like, it's a small tinge of worry that passes really fast, because I know that the person who's playing this necromancer is probably going to be very different from that problem player. So yeah, that's the story. I don't really hate any specs. I think they're all valuable in their own unique way. Final question from Alex Pick. When I first started my campaign, I was super excited about making a world, a story, art, and everything about the experience for my players. We've done 20 sessions, and we're probably going to have an epic battle scene soon, but I'm not really that inspired by DMing anymore. I'm not tired of it, I'm just not excited to do it. Running the game is still fun, but the level of quality that I run the game at has declined because I've traded in my 3 hours of prep for about half an hour. Do you have any advice on getting excited to DM again? I have seen the Matt Colville video. I honestly don't know which Matt Colville video you're talking about, but I'm just gonna trust that it was a good one. And honestly, I don't know if we're gonna offer better advice than Matt Colville, but the main thing that I do when I'm feeling burnt out on D&D is just, I take a break. I take a 1 week break just to get my inspiration back. I spend a lot of time not playing D&D. I spend a lot of time watching movies, playing video games, and from those, I get inspiration. I don't look specifically for D&D inspiration. I let it come to me because in that way, I feel like it's more, I guess, natural, and I get more excited about it when it does happen. I know it's a funny coincidence, but I'm actually taking a break this week. It's also because I'm prepping a second campaign. That's a whole other thing. But right now, I am taking a break for a couple reasons. One of them being that, yeah, I was feeling a little bit burnt out of my main campaign that I've been running for about 46 sessions now. It's been a long time, and I do need a breather. It's just a 1 week break just to get my head together and to get some inspiration, because again, I need that inspiration to flow naturally. When you try to force it, when you try to force yourself to feel inspired to run D&D, when you try to force yourself to have ideas, you are not going to have ideas. It's not going to happen. You're going to feel pressure and you're going to feel bad, and it's going to get only worse. Just allowing yourself to take a breather sounds very stereotypical in terms of advice. I know what tons of people are thinking right now, like, oh my god, yeah, everyone says that, but I'm serious. It really does work. Just taking a week, just a single week off, really helps to revitalize me. I mean, just knowing that I don't need to worry about prepping a session this week is really good for my mind. I feel really good right now knowing that I have a week off to get my mind together and to get some more sessions ready for my players when we return next week. I know taking a break from playing D&D can feel really bad, but I do recommend it. I know everyone watching this video, I'm sure you guys love TTRPGs, but every now and then it's not an unhealthy thing to take a break, especially when you're the dungeon master who has to prep the whole thing. Hope that answered your question, friend, and I wish you best of luck in getting your mojo back. And that's where we are going to end today's episode of Q&Play. If you guys enjoyed it, then please do leave a like. If you want to see more of my content, then you can check out our Tabletop Tavern Tips series, where I give advice for both DMs and players old and new. And while you're there in the cards, subscribe to Crispy's Tavern to get more of our content right as it comes out. And finally, if you want to leave your own questions or thoughts, go down to the comments down below. If you can't think of a comment, leave the comment Take Back the Throne to reference the game I'm playing in the background and to let me know you made it to the end of the video. In essence, like, comment, subscribe. I will see you all next time. Farewell.